Welcome to the February 8th, 2022 electronic meeting of the Energy Commission. This virtual meeting is to affect social distancing and to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We will conduct this meeting similar to in-person meetings. We hardly remember what those are like. Commissioners, during roll call, please indicate your current location. During the meeting, please remain on camera just as you would during in-person meetings. Also mute your microphone when not speaking. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities at the beginning and end of the meeting, please call one of the following toll-free numbers: 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 and enter the meeting ID number 937-6751-6819 on your phone. This information is also available on the published agenda and in the public notices section of the city's website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16 or AT&T channel 99 and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. Missy, would you get us going by reading the land acknowledgement?
Absolutely, Chair Mirsky. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe and Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained generally in unconscionable ways from Indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals.
Thank you very much. So next is roll call. And as I mentioned, we have two commissioners that are unable to attend. Councilmember Radina has a work conflict, as does Commissioner George. They both let us know in advance. But Missy, if you'd go through the roll call, then we'll know who else is here and who else is missing. Thanks.
Absolutely. And if you could just state where you're calling in from and give me a second to type that into notes, that would be great. Commissioner Hookham?
Chuck Hookham here in my not so warm office in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Commissioner McComber?
Here and calling in from my house in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Clevey?
Here, calling from my solar house in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Levin?
Here from my home in Ann Arbor.
And Chair Mirsky? No, you already gave us
my home in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Vice Chair Colvin Garcia?
I'm here in my home in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Briggs?
Here in my messy house in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner McCoy?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Kerber?
Here and in my house in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Peck?
Here in my dog-ridden house in Ann Arbor.
Love these descriptors, everyone. Commissioner Juneau?
Here in my home in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Stevenson?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Great. Chair, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. So next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? So moved by Councilmember Briggs and seconded by Commissioner Hookham. All those in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. Approved. Thank you very much. And then we also have to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which was a work session. By the way, we had some problem with the Legistar site. Hopefully people had a chance to review them. I did, and I didn't see any issue with them. Hopefully others did as well. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Councilmember Briggs, and seconded by Commissioner Stevenson. Thank you. So now we have public input.
There, we do have to do a vote on that.
Oh, we do. Sorry, you're right. Thank you. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we move on to public input. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. I'll repeat what I said before. If you're watching on CTN, please call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter the meeting ID 937-6751-6819. Of course, that also works if you're dialing on your phone. This information is also on the meeting agenda and on the video feed. Staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone and you will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any background noise so that we may hear you clearly. And then finally, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments.
All right, caller ending in 650.
Good evening, members of the Commission. My name is Wayne Appleyard, and I was on the Energy Commission for about 26 years. First, I would like to say how great the Bryant Community Program that you will see a presentation on this evening is. OSI should really be applauded for developing a comprehensive and innovative program that will hopefully reduce the energy use in up to 260 homes in that neighborhood. While I was commissioner, I was one of the early drafters of what was TOM, Time of Marketing, then HEAD, Home Energy Assessment Disclosure, then HELP, Home Energy Labeling Program, and now HERD, Home Energy Rating Disclosure. This ordinance would simply require that the home energy score assessment be conducted and made available to all prospective home buyers when the home was put on the market, giving the buyers more information on how much it would cost to heat and cool their home, as well as improvements that they could make and roll into their mortgage. The number of acronyms gives you an indication as to how long this has been worked on. It was first proposed in 2011 when the Commission, including myself, was working on the Climate Action Plan. It was also part of the climate funding proposal promoted by the Ann Arbor Climate Partnership before funding became available through the county millage in 2018. The Energy Commission had a committee that over the course of about a year in 2018 researched what other cities, including Austin and Portland, had done, met with our local realtors, and drafted the ordinance. There had been hope that this ordinance would have been enacted in 2019. There's been a series of reasons put forth as to why this hasn't been the case, including the desire to enact it as a package with the commercial disclosure and the green rental housing initiatives. Since the commercial and multifamily disclosure ordinance was enacted in October of last year, something else seems to have happened. Although the additional conversation with realtors was supposed to have taken place last summer or before, they seem to have only started this month. The current draft of the ordinance is virtually the same as it was in 2018, with only minor wording and organizational changes. It is now not planned to be passed until 2023. According to the presentation to be shown tonight, 1,200 homes are sold in Ann Arbor each year. would be evaluated, and 250 homes or so would be retrofitted. Homes only come on the market over periods of time, and each year that goes by without this ordinance being passed, those homes may not get to be evaluated until sometime in the 2030s. The additional CO2 put into the atmosphere due to the loss of these improvements will stay in the atmosphere for at least 7 generations. I strongly urge the Commission to pass a resolution recommending that the Council enact this ordinance immediately. It's ready to go. Don't let another 1,200 homes be missed. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we lost Missy for a second. She was frozen. So we're going to have to wait a second until she's able to rejoin to tell us if there's other callers. Here she comes.
John?
Yes.
While we're waiting, can I ask a question? Wayne mentioned a resolution. Is he asking us to create a resolution in support of it, or has there been a resolution already put forth that we're going to be considering, or should have considered?
So I don't know for sure. To my knowledge, no resolution has been prepared.
No, I didn't think so.
So
Okay.
that's something we would have to talk about as a commission later in the meeting if that's necessary, desirable, etc. So
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Welcome back,
Sorry.
Missy.
I'm back. I hate internet. I apologize, everyone. And thanks, public speaker. We have one more hand up. Caller ending in 134.
Thank you, Dr. Stoltz and Chair Mirsky. This is Ken Garber, 28 Haverhill Court. I share Mr. Appleyard's dismay at the herd ordinance delays. The heat pump discussion got me thinking about thermodynamics. Indulge me here. The second law of thermodynamics states that the total disorder or entropy of the universe is constantly increasing and that someday everything will come to a complete stop. But it's not total futility. The law implies that any system not in equilibrium, not at maximum entropy, can be made to do useful work. 2 centuries ago, the French physicist Sadi Carnot imagined a heat engine that could harness the flow of heat from a hot chamber to a cold chamber. It's not heat that drives the heat engine, but the difference in temperature between 2 chambers, which is converted to work. That's how steam engines worked in Carnot's day. They didn't just push a piston with hot air. Heat engines can never be 100% efficient because you can't convert all the heat energy to mechanical energy. But just as you can use a heat difference from hot to cold to drive work, the second law says you can use work to move heat from cold to hot. This is the principle of a refrigerator or a heat pump. They're the same thing. Amazingly, Carnot's theorem shows that a heat pump can be more than 100% efficient, much more. A modern heat pump coefficient of performance is between 2 and 4, or 200% to 400% more heat energy created than electrical energy expended. We don't violate the first law of thermodynamics, which states that energy can't be created or destroyed. We're just taking the heat energy in the cold space, and by adding work, you move it to a hot space, making it hotter. The work in this case employs electricity to compress a gas, which raises its temperature. The refrigerator was invented in 1899, but it took a while before someone used a backwards Carnot heat engine to heat a living space. In 1948, Robert Weber made a heat pump and replaced his coal furnace with it. So heat pumps exploit the second law. Just as a system out of equilibrium can drive work through entropy, we can use work to temporarily reverse the process. Gas furnaces, on the other hand, use a chemical reaction to heat air, very thermodynamically inefficient. You don't gain energy from burning fossil fuels. You're just using the solar energy stored in ancient plant matter, which we call oil, gas, and coal. Breaking their chemical bonds releases heat. Because fossil fuels are abundant and have a high energy density, doing this is relatively cheap, but it's overwhelming the Earth's systems for cycling carbon. That's second law too. Once the polar ice disappears, the ice caps melt, the permafrost releases all its carbon, and we're finally done with fossil fuels, the climate will reach a new equilibrium. Commissioner Overpeck can tell you what that world will look like. Our task is to shift that future equilibrium to the left as far as possible. It's beyond urgent. So let's start by applying the second law, make heat pumps universal.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. Missy, do we have anybody else?
We don't, Chair Mirsky.
Very good. Great. So that has a lot quicker than what it has been on many occasions last year. So we are now pleased to be able to go to the main part of our agenda. And first on the agenda is, as was already mentioned by Wayne Appleyard, a presentation about the Bryant Neighborhood and its decarbonization project, along with a lot of other benefits. So Missy, may I turn things over to you and let you introduce it?
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here today and tell you a little bit about the Bryant project. You are not going to have to hear me talk, which is, I guess, a gift, I'm sure, for all of you. Instead, we have Madison Case, who is an AmeriCorps Vista with Community Action Network, one of our important community engagement partners. And Derek Miller's not with us tonight, but I want to acknowledge Community Action Network, which is really our strategic CBO, community-based organization, helping to move this project forward. So surprise, John was very generous. Our Legistar system went down, actually across all boards and commissions, but that presented an opportunity to perhaps redo this presentation. So in the attachments to the agenda, you're going to see two slides. One is kind of the more standard slide deck for OSI. We're not going to present that tonight. I'm happy to answer questions about it. Madison is going to present this project from Community Action Network's perspective. So Madison, welcome to the Energy Commission. It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Missy. The pleasure is all mine, I assure you. So I did not have a virtual-based job during the pandemic, so bear with me on my screen sharing abilities. Let me pull that up for you. All right. All right, does that look good for everyone? Awesome, thank you so much. Well, as Missy said, my name is Madison Case. I'm an AmeriCorps Vista for the Community Action Network. Previous to CAN, I worked in the corporate retail industry. So I have an operations background in the food industry as well. So this work is incredibly important to me and always has been. And it's been a delight to move back into more community-based work and get to work on this project. I'm going to go over a couple different things in my presentation. First, just the basic project goal, why CAN is involved, why Bryant is an important community to be recognized. Some of the efforts we're going through, I'm going to focus on 3 different topics: community outreach, climate change and resilience, public health, as I made a typo on that one, and human services, next steps and questions. I didn't feel the need to parse out any challenges along the way as well. I'll talk about those as I go through each one of the slides. I don't think any challenges should be removed from the ability to move forward in any of our work either. So just let me know if you have questions along the way, but I did take some time at the very end. So first and foremost, the project goal is to create the first decarbonized existing neighborhood in Arbor. We want to make sure that it's a replicable model throughout the rest of the area, but also ensuring that we're meeting people where they're at with sustainability. That means ensuring that all of our goals, our aspirations, and our strengths are coming from the residents themselves. Sustainability is something that means something different for everyone, and that's something we've really seen as trying to move forward with this project. Some of us, like those of you here, think sustainability is something that is more maybe of an academic point of view or professional point of view. But as we start to trickle down into different communities, that may mean something different for everyone. And at the end of the day, we want to ensure that we're using the residents and their strengths, whether or not it's personal, it's their community outreach abilities, or just their general interest and excitement about this moving forward to garner them, nonprofits like us, and other government organizations like OSI working together to create a healthy environment and neighborhood. But on top of that, first and foremost, we want to ensure that we are combining both the climate change crisis, social justice to create our climate justice along the way. So why the Bryant Neighborhood? The Bryant Neighborhood is a frontline neighborhood, which means that at first and foremost, it's going to bear the worst climate consequences as we go through the climate change crisis. Neighborhoods that are historically underserved or under-resourced are going to be hit the hardest, and bearing that name or don't have the resources to move forward and make the changes that might make them more sustainable. So starting where it's most needed is incredibly important when it comes to this work. A couple different demographics about the Bryant neighborhood here. About 50% of our neighborhood is of color. We have 75% of our residents are low income. The Bryant neighborhood was actually the first, I want to say the first affordable housing area, not necessarily as, apartment style living, but as housing style living in Ann Arbor, with about 260 homes built in the 1970s. They're 50-50 split with renter occupied, but we do have a very energy burdened neighborhood. And we want to ensure that while, we're taking that burden off of our neighborhood, that we're doing it in a way that can be replicated across the rest of Ann Arbor as well. So again, why is it important that we work with Community Action Network when we're coming to the Bryant neighborhood? We have an incredibly long-standing relationship with the community. The Bryant Community Center as its own has been around since around the 1980s, but it's been owned and operated by CANT since the 2000s. And one thing that we see is incredibly important when working with our communities is having longstanding resources there, not just within just having the community center, but also having staff that is there for a really long time. With the amount of change that happens in some of these neighborhoods and communities, we want to ensure that we are a very reliable source of trust, of resources, and anything that goes along with having someone that you know and understand in our neighborhood. Here I have pictured Sky, who is our community center director. He's been with us for over a decade at the Bryant Community Center, so you can imagine the amount of not just access he has to the community, but the amount of trust and just availability and understand and love for the community there. When you're there for a decade and you work with students and with kids and with families, you see families flourish, and you have someone from kindergarten through their entire way through high school. I mean, there's a lot of trust and compatibility that you have with someone there that long. And I think a really great side tangent story is that's Crystal, our community outreach specialist that works for Community Action Network, but Sky is actually the godfather for her child. So if that shows you how important our relationships are with the community, and Crystal lives in the Bryant neighborhood, it's incredibly important, and we see that. Our three pillars of service are educational enrichment, food assistance, and housing security. So we do act as a human resource basket in a way for the neighborhood. We help them communicate with DTE. We help them communicate with any other bill payments they have, and not in a way to make sure that we're solving any issues or helping them work to it. We want to ensure that we are not canceling the problem out and helping them thrive, and work on their own and stand on their own as well. Our food assistance programs are through our food pantry, and we're actually the largest food pantry in Washtenaw County. We tend to have around 600 clients per week. Throughout the pandemic, we allowed people to come more than once per week or whenever it was needed because we saw the need was that high. But even now with families just coming once per week, we're still seeing around the same amount of demand, which just shows you how much it's needed in the area. And as far as educational enrichment goes, we have our programs that are after school program, summer program, but it's all year round. It's a year round curriculum. So they have a theme every year. Next year, it's environmental sustainability. So we're really excited to bring a lot of the work that we're doing in this project trickle down from not only just parents and families, but down to the kids. Let's see, going on. So one of the things that we have been working on specifically are, one of our three topics is community outreach, which obviously for a project like this is going to be key, not only in creating a base of that trust for, my work in the neighborhood, Crystal's work in the neighborhood, but also just us, getting a basis of understanding of where people are at with sustainability as well. We have me and Crystal doing mailers and monthly events in the neighborhood. We started out with door knocking though. I know all of you are familiar in some capacity with the policy world. and any role to community outreach, but that has really been our most successful form of outreach so far, because that face-to-face interaction really has created an amount of trust and understanding with us. Because while Crystal's lived in the neighborhood for her entire life, she grew up there, she still doesn't know all of the residents, and I know none of the residents, and I want to ensure that my face triggers trust and understanding, or at least just an interest in the program and wanting to ask questions, because they don't need to trust me right away. They don't need to trust Crystal, but they at least, we're hoping that they want to ask questions and be more interested in the program. Some of the monthly events that we've been also to have been able to have face-to-face conversations with residents through are our community cleanup. Every year we bring about 3 30-yard dumpsters into the neighborhood and allow residents to come down, throw what they need to away, and then come to the community center afterwards for food. So then we were able to capture quite a few residents in an initial survey that we did, trying to gauge the demographics of the neighborhood, their interest in being a part of our surveys, our, just email lists and other parts of our just general outreach program. But we were also able to get a lot of DTE information from residents there as well, which is going to help us gain a lot more information about their actual energy use in their homes. So the community cleanup was great. Next year, we're actually working with Missy and OSI to ensure that we do it in a more sustainable way. So we're not only going to get our open tops, but we're also going to bring in a few more waste diversion friendly open tops in to ensure that we're making sure the electronics are going to the right place, our plastics, so on and so forth. And that's actually what I did in my recent my past job before this with Kroger. So I'm really excited about that in the future. We also did a tree planting in the fall as well, and that was incredibly successful with the neighborhood. It's also, again, a face-to-face interaction with a staff member of OSI. We have other volunteers in the city of Ann Arbor, and some of those were A20 ambassadors, and we were excited to have those ambassadors there as well. But outside of that, they're also helping us with a couple other projects along the way. I'm actually an ambassador too, so outside of my time at CAN, I've been with, I know, snaps for that time with OSI, but it's been really exciting to get to know other people that have a passion for sustainability in Ann Arbor, but then also bring other professionals that have a very specified interest in sustainability into this project. So with the Bryant project, we have the availability now to work with one of our team architects, work with people that have interest in the school systems, and that very type of sustainability interest that not only was part of the tree planting, but that going forward are going to be a part of a bunch of different facets of this project, but specifically more in our home assessments, which I'll get to later. We hosted a master gardening class at the Bryant Community Center, not just for residents, but OSI did their training there too. So using the center really as an area for people to see as a community structure, not just for the Bryant community, but that the city sees it as a very valid space to be used in the area as well. And I think that helps garner productivity, not just for thinking the community center is a space for people who have need, but also have an interest. That's one of our challenges that we've seen going forward, is that people see the community center as a very, low income, we don't want to use the space because we don't have an income-based need, or, we're not food insecure, those types of areas. So we're wanting to ensure people see BCC as an area that everyone is welcome and that everyone has a valid reason to go there. So that was one of the pieces that we use that for. And then we have an upcoming Valentine's Day event with small themes like Love Your Home, Love Your Planet, that we're going to use as sustainability, and with the theme of sustainability, not just with our families, but also introduce it with the kids and start moving forward with the thematic curriculum for the year. We've also done some mailers. My next slide is just some of those examples. You can see me and Crystal doing some door knocking over there on the left side. These are just the front pages of both of these as well, so they're not in full form. But we did have MLab come out and do an article about the area too, or we were fortunate enough that MLab was interested enough to do an article about our work. So they came out and took some professional pictures, which have been really great for us as far as our outreach has gone, because we have, we're involved in more of an official capacity, and then we can link people to a more official sign up in an area that people can trust too, because MLab obviously is an incredibly trustworthy source for a lot of Michiganders when they read their news. And then in the middle, I have our newsletter here that has events coming up. Our our overview of our project, the contact information if they want to learn more, but on the back it has summaries of events that we've had in the past and some sort of educational component just to kind of walk people through a sustainable understanding of what verbiage we're using when we're talking to. I don't want to talk about weatherization and electrification if no one knows what I'm talking about. And that's been a part of the challenges of understanding where people are at with sustainability, as well as we might not use the same words for similar things. And then also we went to the Green Fair and had a booth there this year. And then the one on the far right for event outreach is what we use there. All right, so moving on to climate change and resilience, I do have a photo here of our community cleanup. That was everyone that came out for the community there. But one of the first things I want to talk about is BCC as a resilience hub. We do have our Northside Community Center at Community Action Network already outfitted for solar panels and is a resilience hub for the city of Ann Arbor already. So we're excited to bring BCC in as another one of those for our company, and already have had the experience of going through that as well. So it really lends it as an easier task. And with Bryant Community Center being the largest food pantry in Washtenaw County, it really opens up not just food security stabilization for our community, but also the rest of Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County, as I stated. But when we're looking at food security and other things that create sustainable environments for people to help them thrive, we should be looking outside of Bryant anyway. But we're excited to be able to service our neighborhood. And a couple other things are that we've seen that come with their own challenges that are part of our home evaluations are weatherization, electrification, which would be the end game opportunities for us to be able to address when it comes to our home assessment. So I'm going to go a bit out of order here, but right now, one of our biggest things that we're working on is home energy evaluations. We have two different options for residents. We first have a virtual self-evaluation option that's completed with a staff member from CAN, Elevate, or the A20 ambassadors, or OSI. We have quite a plethora of people that are getting trained to do this, which we're very excited about. And we love just having that, again, a very different and diverse professional background, interest of sustainability. The resident is paid with a $50 Visa gift card, and this is all done over the phone. And we've done a couple practice rounds and also have a training video already made because we did a virtual audit of Crystal Stewart's, our outreach specialist home. So if anyone has any questions, that's a part of something that we can default to in the process, and also allows residents to see how it's done, gives them, again, a little bit more trust in the program and what we're doing. And it's a little less invasive. One of the challenges that we've seen with our in-person, as I'll get to, comprehensive evaluations is that they are inside of their homes. They're about 2 hour long services. You're not paid for them up front, although they are valued around $300. But residents do find that a little bit invasive. We've seen in the area that residents are worried about, the state of their home, whether that's cleanliness or need to have updates on their homes, or we've been home ridden as a society for 2.5 years at this point. I think we all have things that we are a little bit worried about when it comes to how we're living right now. But obviously that's very accentuated in under-resourced communities. So some of the things that we're looking for, going back to weatherization and electrification when we go into our homes is, do we need to make any basic repairs on these homes? Is there a hole in the roof? And that's why someone's not interested in sustainability. I mean, that's one of the very specific examples that has really hit home for us is that, we want to go in and talk about, changing their stoves and, getting into like different discussions of, electrifying their house so they can get solar panels someday. But that's not important to someone who has really basic needs, like getting their roof fixed, getting insulation fixed up. And obviously those things all lend themselves to sustainability. So we want to ensure that we're making homes comfortable for everyone as well. We started, a part of that too is our language towards these evaluations is we want to say they're home energy evaluations for comfort. And then in addition, sustainability. We even started out using the word audit, and that was not a fan favorite. So we've moved on from that too. No one's interested in audits. I'm not. I don't think most people are. So that's been an interesting understanding for this as well. So big picture when we go into people's homes is that we can gather data and then connect them with additional resources that might be available. So using our home assessments results, we can, reduce the energy used by creating, using weatherization tools. Like I stated, there's some other programs that we're able to connect them with that can help with those big repairs that might, in their roofs and their insulation, any big things that they might need, windows, any things like that. We're using thermal imaging tools when we go into the homes for those more comprehensive evaluations. The home assessments that we're doing that are self-evaluations do have a little bit of wiggle room with what materials and electronics that we can bring in. But for the most part, that's something that you really need a professional to come and do. The imaging tools are different. I think we can get some of those in the future. But as far as, assessing how much air is leaving your home through your window, we do have a lot more like comprehensive tools that we're using for the in-person ones. And our end game for this too is obviously electrifying the homes to make them more efficient. We spend about 90% of our time indoors, and electric stoves versus a gas stove emit about a gas stove emits about 50 to 400% more nitrogen than an electric stove would. So it's far more healthy for our families to be inside their homes if we were to make a change like that. But also doing it on a mass scale allows us to, possibly get buyer discounts and really make physical changes to someone's home, which will increase the trust tenfold in a project like this. And one thing that we are using is wanting to use like an improvement guide for the homes too. So if we go into a home and they have X problem, we want to ensure that we link them with the correct resource in Michigan that might help them, whether or not it's a weatherization tool, but just kind of being a human services hub as we are at BCC, but ensuring that if we're going to a home, we're addressing issues as we see them, because nothing's worse than seeing a problem and walking right by it. That decreases trust in an instant, and they never want to be a part of this project. So that's something that we're working on right now as well, just to kind of have someone like me or someone I'm training in the future, especially, it can look at the guide and say, oh, they have a hole in the roof or they have issues with their windows, go to this resource and we can help find them funding. All right, and then our third one here is public health and human services. Like I said, we want to be able to connect them with other resources in Ann Arbor or Michigan that might already be doing work like this, because we're not, while this going fully decarbonized in a neighborhood is a very novel idea, helping residents with issues in their home is not. So some of the things already being offered in the city of Ann Arbor are aging in place, and that requires a home evaluation for sustainability. So we would already be doing part of that initial assessment to get older folks in our neighborhood, which is a pretty decent amount of our neighborhood, connected with a resource that would help make those market changes to their homes and help them feel more comfortable. And then as I already spoke out, we have weatherization as an option as well for people that is already happening. So we want to ensure that we're not remaking the wheel in a way that doesn't need to happen. We want to ensure that we're also being collaborative with our work too. We work with our residents on communication with DTE and other providers just to ensure that they can make their bills, they're not being evicted, they never get any of their resources turned off during the winter, during the summer. Always we want to ensure that they're as comfortable as possible and their needs are being met. That's something we're already doing, but once we get more of this information, we'll be able to do that tenfold. I have an example of some of the information we're able to get at the bottom, but what we can get in a resident's online profile in DT is pretty comprehensive, and we have quite a compilation of their work too, so we can see what the whole neighborhood is using as well, which helps us a lot in our data collection. Also helping renters negotiate changes with landlords, because we do have a 50-50 split with our neighborhood. While some of them own that, some residents own their homes and are, obviously able to make the decision to be a part of this program, maybe not able to, have the resources to do so, but landlords are very, or have been a little bit hesitant to do some of the evaluations or to make changes because they may not be able to the neighborhood. While our home assessments don't change anything in their homes, they're not trying to sell you anything. Those are just for information basis or on an information basis. We do want to ensure that landlords know about all of that, and we can help renters get this evaluation done and then negotiate with their landlords to either provide incentives for them to make these changes, but also ensure that their renters being treated fairly as well. But we also have a lot of ecological benefits for the neighborhood health while going forward with this project. It's not just about electrifying our homes. Our 10,000 Trees initiative through Ann Arbor has also benefited Bryant, as I said earlier, in our tree planting. This allows our community to get free trees, throughout the entirety of this program, and it takes away invasive species, and it also just allows our neighborhood to feel more comfortable and more like a community. And one of the things that has been historically an issue in the Bryant neighborhood is flooding. And some of the things that we've been working on are rain gardens. We have one in front of BCC, but the master gardening class that was held was actually specific to rain gardens. So that gives our residents the knowledge that they need to create a rain garden in their home or in their neighborhood or wherever they see fit to allow them to have some sort of like personal representation in moving forward with that. But then some of our next steps that we have are creating a very specific communication strategy with the neighborhood so it can be easily replicated in the rest of the neighborhoods that can influence, which again is another huge bonus for CAN working on this project. Is Bryant is just one of 6 community centers. We have 7, one's in a school, but we have 6 community centers that influence their own sets of communities. Bryant's the only one that doesn't work specifically with the Ann Arbor Housing Commission. A lot of our other community centers are inside specific units in a neighborhood. So they might be influencing 16 to 30 families, but that's still 16 to 30 families in the city of Ann Arbor. And while Bryant might be on the biggest scale, it's going to be way easier to replicate in neighborhoods that we have more influence over. So creating a communication strategy, because I'm not going to be here forever. Crystal's not going to be here forever. So we want to ensure that all of our other employees and other people that hop in on this project from any other area are able to go forward with this. We're working on itemized rosters for community interest. So while we have resources to do home assessments, we need to ensure that we have people signed up for them or on a waiting list to go forward as well and have their availability. And we are seeing too, as we find more funding opportunities, that a lot of the funders will come in and ask if we have interest already and are waiting for it. So we don't want to have a situation where we get funding and don't have the people in line in order to take part in any of the initiatives. We do have 2 families waiting on solar fitting for their houses right now too, while I mentioned solar and community interest, which is very, very exciting, but still some apprehension from the neighborhood. So, while again, I would jump at any opportunity to get solar for my home, I think it's very different for everyone and what they feel comfortable with. So we're really excited that we were able to move forward with that too. Some of our current funding opportunities that we're working with or that are, lines in the fire are the McKnight Foundation, which we have gotten money from in this past year, but it ends, I want to say, in about a month, but we've already reapplied for that foundation. So we should be seeing, we already feel like we have a very positive feedback with them because it's a continued grant, but we get our formal response here soon. We're working with Solar Moonshot, the Trowbridge Foundation, the J40 Fund. The J40 Fund is specific to energy work in underserved neighborhoods that work with a government enterprise and a nonprofit. So we are a very good fit for this. So I have my fingers crossed for them as well. An EPA grant to DOE weatherization and LEAP. So we have a lot of opportunities here going forward for funding, not just for community resources, but also hoping to get someone here on full-time employment or at least part-time employment. So then someone like me or someone like Crystal can have the ability to stay here longer on a different basis because my Vista year is only 1 year. But the hope would be that I would stay on to the project longer or that Crystal would be able to take on greater responsibilities. Like I stated earlier, it's great to have a lot of people involved, but having the same people creates a lot more trust for the neighborhood. All right, but that's all I have. So if you have any questions, feel free to jump in, but thank you so much for having me. I have a question from Mark Clevey.
So I have 2 questions. One of them, I very much appreciate the messaging difficulties between audit and assessment, but I also, having run a lot of these programs myself at the state and local levels, know that using a standardized audit methodology is essential to getting funding from Michigan Saves. And so I guess my question is, not so much concern what you're calling it, but, are you using a standardized methodology, industry accepted methodology that, reputable financial institutions would recognize, like Michigan Saves, because their loans require that the assessment, either a solar assessment or energy efficiency upgrade assessment, that assessment be included in the loan packaging. So are you using a standardized methodology for these assessments?
Well, I think part of the messaging that we, like what we're focused on is just ensuring that the residents are more like gauging how a resident will respond to the wording. If we have any funder that needs it to be like, what's the word I'm looking for? Worded in a specific way, we still call them audits amongst ourselves, or assessments, here and there. Sometimes it's evaluation. We really have focused on evaluation for the area, as far as residents go, because that has seemed to work the best and we get the most responses. But in our like colloquial conversations between like me and OSI, we've been using assessment. But like, to answer your question point blank, if someone needs it to be called something else, as long as the structure is there and it looks like what they need it to be as far as what an audit includes or the assessment includes, our verbiage stands as whatever the funder would need.
Okay.
Madison, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Mark, can I pick up that really quick? Because there's nuance here. I think one is that all of the assessments, whether it's virtual or of course, if we have a home energy, auditor coming in, they actually do meet the home energy score requirements, but it's plus, it's and. Right. There's so much more that the neighbors have identified. And second, a lot of these households are not going to be eligible for Michigan Saves products. Michigan Saves is one of our collaborators. They are economically out of the lending space for Michigan Saves. So we're trying to fix that with a lot of the grants we're pursuing.
Okay, so great. Second thing is this issue that's come up between the Environmental Commission and the Energy Commission since I've been on it, has to do with tree planting. So I love the 10,000 tree planting. My question is, given the fact that you're trying to do solar and some of the people in the neighborhood have obviously wanted to do solar, and I've done solar assessments in that neighborhood myself, as well as Larry and others, is the decision being made every time someone plants a tree, is that siting? Is it solar access being taken into consideration? Because we can, do an awful lot of damage. We're basically, if you want to do solar, and we throw people into the lap of DTE as their only option by covering up their roof with a tree, I think, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So is that happening? Is that somebody making a decision? Yes, we're going to plant a tree and we're going to plant here instead of there. Solar access, is it being protected?
I'll put that question to Missy because I'm not personally involved in the 10,000 Trees Initiative.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'll say that we haven't approached it yet because we've only done, the tree planting we did is the 10,000 trees you're familiar with. We have the free tree giveaway. This was the community tree planting, in which these are big trees, like $150, $300 size trees. So we only planted 20 of them in the neighborhood. And I don't think any of the placements, because I was on site doing tree planting, would interfere with solar access based on we planted far off to the side. We planted in the northern portion as opposed to impacting southern exposure. Right. But I think your point is a good one, that we need to integrate that as we do more of these events.
So when I raised this point, 6 or 7 years ago at the beginning, and several times the answer I've gotten back previously from Matt Nod and others on the Environmental Commission is, well, it's not something we have to worry about because we can just do community solar. And as of today, I checked, there's no community solar law passed in Michigan. And it's doubtful we will have one. So this issue of, being sure that we're not disrupting distributed generation isn't just philosophy. It's not just a nice thing. It is, we have an opportunity to expend our tax dollars to, in the words of Chairman Mirsky, optimize the impact we make on climate change. And so I think we need to, be sure that we're not hurting ourselves, doing something. I'm all for tree planting. I love the idea, but I'm also want to see the sustainable energy utility work. And if we start covering up roofs, we're not going to be doing ourselves any favors. And Bryant Neighborhood is an ideal candidate for a community solar project underneath a sustainable energy utility. So thank you.
Commissioner Hookham.
I apologize for the background racket here at the office, but thanks for the presentation, Madison. Well done. I also a big supporter of Bryant. In fact, I have 2 children that went to Bryant Elementary. I did probably one of the first energy audits of the school. It didn't have very good results. I remember that and getting into a dispute with the school board a little bit on that. But I just wanted to say, you know, the goals look great. I just hope that you're documenting things. As you know, the greenhouse gas emission inventory, the baseline that you start with from a decarbonization point of view needs to be very carefully built so that you have some place to go from. And I trust you're working really hard on getting the boundary conditions laid out. If there's anything we can do at the Energy Commission level to help in that front, there's some of us that have been in that space and can help you in that world. I'm sure OSI is involved very greatly as well, and anything we can do to help is good. Just kind of curious what your timeline is. You mentioned you want to be the first decarbonized community. Have you defined what that means and what the timeline is to achieve that?
Yeah, I think our goal is 5 years. Missy can jump in on this one too. I know that it's 5 years is our main goal for that. But as far as itemizing what things we get done in each of those years, I think there's work still to be done on what that looks like. But it's also very fluid with our interest in how we get out in the community as well. But I'll let Missy continue that if there's more specifics that I can't answer.
No, Madison's right. 2027 is the aspirational goal that we have.
Okay. A lot of heavy lifting. Let us know what we can do to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? I have a very quick one, hopefully. Could you give us maybe a 1 or 2 minute overview of the Community Action Network? I heard of the organization, but that is it. And maybe there's others on the call too that are as ill-informed as I am.
Yeah, no problem. So we are a conglomeration. We're named quite aptly. We are a conglomeration of community centers across Ann Arbor. We have 7 community centers that are standalone, or 6 community centers that are standalone, 7 including the one that we have in Brick Elementary. We span across Washtenaw County because Brick is in Ypsilanti. Bryant Community Center is the only one that is based in a community that is of homes that are not covered by the Ann Arbor Housing Commission, but then our others are covered by the Housing Commission. And then also we are just very much so centered in that community inside of different units that they might have. We offer all 3 of those main pillars of work in all of our community centers. We have food distributions, even in our Brick Elementary, to all of our residents. They come in different days depending on the community center and the need in the community as well, also based on different types of delivery methods if we can deliver to the neighborhoods. And so that's our food security station. Like I said, Bryant Community Center covers all of Washtenaw County and operates 5 days per week. So we see quite a few more residents and community members there. That is connected to food gatherers. That is our main form of food distribution from them as well. And we work on tonnage. So the amount of residents that get determines the amount of food that we get from them. Our educational enrichment is all year thematic curriculum. We work with students in after school program and in summer camp. We bring in Vistas like me to work in our all year after school program, but also bring in our very shortened amount of 3-month summer camp ASP staff as well. They're through AmeriCorps Vista or through University of Michigan. We get quite a few PAs from them. We have a lot of social work students that come in and work at our centers. And then additionally, we have our housing and human services. So housing security, obviously in the centers that are covered by the commission is covered a little bit differently as at Bryant Community Center. But those are our main things. We have one more pillar, which is sustainability at the very end too. And this project really covers that sustainable pillar. We're working on that very specifically with our diversity and inclusion programs that we're obviously very much so enforcing in our inclusion going forward too. But we saw a need to ensure that we're not just helping communities, but we're trying to get people out of housing commission homes and standing on their own and being able to strive in their neighborhood, strive where they are and thrive. So so that's one of the big things that we're working on that we've recently included in one of our goals in our mission. but really those 4 pillars are our biggest ones.
Thank you very much. Missy, go ahead. Do you have something you want to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one additional element of this project. And of course, we've focused, and Madison, fabulous job on the sustainability elements. But it's not lost, I think, on many people on the line that when we're successful, there will be a demand for the neighborhood. And so part of what we're focusing on is how we directly confront gentrification and how we focus on intergenerational wealth accumulation and neighborhood stabilization. So there are other elements of this project that are very much related to the goals that we have, but it's things like, if we are able to lower bills, how are we helping people with financial literacy to make some investments, to put that money aside so that they can pass that home on? Or how are we working with households to make sure they have a will, so the house actually passes, to next of kin, which we sadly had a case that didn't happen in the neighborhood. And so there are other things here that we didn't necessarily talk about, but I wanted to name it because no one has done this, number one. And every effort that we have seen that's made really great sustainability progress has led to some gentrification. So I think it's worthwhile to name it.
Thanks very much. Does anybody else have any questions for Madison or Missy? Madison, thanks very much. We appreciate your passion and your enthusiasm and all the great work that you're doing. And everybody on your team, go back and tell them that we're really excited about this initiative, and certainly the Energy Commission as a commission, but also individually, and the community is there to help support you where it's necessary and appropriate.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today.
Missy, was there anything else on the topic, or do we move now on to Zach's presentation of HERB?
Yeah, Madison, would you mind stopping screen sharing? That's okay, no worries. And then we'll move on to HERD. And I just wanted to share with the commission that we're working on a standardized format to update you on projects and initiatives, and Bryant will be a recurring thing. So if you want to join us for a one-off event, a public engagement event, or if you want to have more sustained engagement, we're going to start offering that, because I think after this meeting, it sounds like the commission might be interested in joining us in that work. So more soon. And with that, Zach, can you please tell us a little bit about what's going on with the Home Energy Rating Disclosure Program?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Missy. Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners, and Council members for having me. For those who I haven't met yet, my name is Zach. I prefer him. I am a Community Engagement Specialist in the Office of Sustainability. And I'm happy to be here tonight to present on the Home Energy Rating Disclosure. Let me get my screen share going. Is that coming through? Thumbs up, great. Yeah, during my time working on this initiative, it was previously known as the Home Energy Audit Disclosure, but given the conversation we just had with Madison, we too agreed that audit is not a very keen word when it comes to messaging. So we changed it to HELP, which is what another community has used. It's the Home Energy Labeling Program. Turns out that is trademarked, however. So that's why we landed on Home Energy Rating Disclosure. So there's some good reason for the name changes. And what we're aiming to do with this, let's see. There we go. So throughout this presentation, we'll cover some of the whys and hows of the program, but we'll start with what this program is intended to accomplish in Ann Arbor. And let's see. My computer suddenly got persnickety just moments before I began sharing, so I don't know what you're seeing at this point.
You see slide 2.
Slide 2, fantastic, thank you. We'll try to keep on top of that. And so what we want to accomplish with this is first help prospective home buyers have access to information about a home's energy consumption before they're committed to buying it. And this, of course, gives them a couple of different benefits, but the overall goal is that we hope this will ultimately drive a market push that values energy efficiency. So while a home energy rating disclosure like this, this initiative officially lies within strategy 3, which is to transition our homes and businesses to being more energy efficient. It also helps inform strategy 2, which is focused on electrification a little bit. So this is part of a suite of initiatives that we're working on. And some of these you might have already heard. The commercial benchmarking ordinance was passed unanimously by council. And that is a reporting program for buildings with 20,000 square feet or more. We're also working on a green rental housing program that just wrapped up a task force, which put together some policy recommendations for a rental focused policy. The home energy rating disclosure will cover non-rented buildings. And then there could likely be something similar for buildings that are smaller than 20,000 square feet, but that are commercial. And so this is where the HERD rating falls. And essentially it covers all single dwelling units, either ones that sit on their own lots or ones that are attached. And so why do we need this program? Well, it's partly because let's start at the beginning. And I believe most of you are somewhat familiar with 820 plan. And so that's the strategy 2 and 3 that I mentioned in here. And that's ultimately why we're starting down this path, because it's mentioned there. But it's also part of these suite of ordinances that I mentioned. But more than that, there is some drive for this from the real estate community. On paper, when they were assessed by the National Association of Realtors, many Midwest realtors found energy efficiency to be something that was valuable, and certainly something that was important to home buyers when it comes to the operational costs of their homes. At the same time, there aren't very many realtors that are super comfortable talking about this. And so focusing on a home energy rating disclosure and supporting the real estate community the intent is to address both of these, to bring forward the information that the home buyers would like to see, while also helping the realtors to feel informed and know how to educate home buyers on this. So who benefits from something like a HERD initiative? Well, a lot of us. Increased consumer literacy, when more home buyers understand what they're buying, generally that can lead to increased consumer action. So it informs them about what sort of performance and energy costs and cost-effective energy improvements they could make on their homes. It also drives economic development. There will be job creation and local investment of energy savings as we start to see the demand for energy efficiency unfold. And there's also community development. By instituting something like the HERD initiative, it clarifies and addresses some of the energy burden risk, especially for low to moderate income households, by giving them a more total cost of their living situation. There are insights from open data that can drive innovation and inform future policies. And finally, it's a consumer protection for home buyers. It informs major purchasing decisions and the ongoing cost of homeownership. So to take a closer look at some of those from the home buyer standpoint, it gives them access to energy cost information before they purchase. And then it gives them more cost-effective energy efficiency recommendations. It lowers the energy costs, which ideally, if the action is taken, which supports lower income households. And then once somebody owns a house and is looking to sell it, it increases their opportunity to showcase their cost-effective efficiency upgrades. So what we can see sometimes are increased values associated with homes that have high energy scores. And what's key to that is that it doesn't devalue homes that have lower energy scores. So similarly to something like the benchmarking ordinance, it's an additive value. In the real estate community, homes with energy scores tend to sell faster. And so that's helpful for real estate agents who rely on the sale of homes for their income. It also allows real estate agents to provide a better service to their customers because home buyers will feel more secure in their huge investment. And it also sort of standardizes a method of discussing energy performance with clients, kind of creates a more of a comfortable space for those conversations to happen. And then the community also benefits because, of course, the continued reduction of carbon emissions from buildings promotes a healthier, safer, and more comfortable community. And it increases the quality of the housing stock as well. So I believe that most of you are somewhat familiar, perhaps, with a home energy score. But just to give you a quick overview of how that works, the home energy score is established by the U.S. Department of Energy. So this is a pretty standardized means of giving a metric to a home's energy performance. There are often parallels drawn between a home energy score and, say, the miles per gallon rating of a standard internal combustion engine. And it just sort of standardizes the language so that when there is a number associated with it, you know what it means. And in a similar way that you wouldn't buy a car, an internal combustion engine car anyway, without knowing what kind of gas mileage it gets. We intend to bring that into the home realm. Why would you buy a home without knowing what kind of energy efficiency rating it has? And so it's a 1 to 10 scale, with 5 being average, generally. And they're using more than 50% of the homes. So for homeowners and sellers, the way it works to get a home energy score is that you would have a DOE, a Department of Energy certified home energy assessor, come evaluate your home's total energy use and then put that assessment into a report. And the home energy score report includes information. Of course, it's got the home energy score and the data that's used to calculate that home energy score, but it also includes home energy use, energy estimates for improvement recommendations that have a 10-year or less payback rate. And if you're selling, that the home energy score is included in your home's energy listing, ideally, under the proposed HERD initiative. And then that report is given to the buyer when you go to sell your home. When we look at what kind of impact HERD would have, we hope that it is huge. Ideally, it will have a big impact. We want it to be educating the home buyers and helping realtors inform and educate folks and kind of drive that market. So the home energy score is intended to recommend certain energy efficiency upgrades that homeowners can make in their home, which not only lowers their energy use and their energy costs, but is a stronger selling point for them. It makes their home more comfortable to live in if they do the upgrades. There are things such as DTE rebates that you can be eligible for certain upgrades. And those upgrades will be outlined in the home energy score. Some impacts that we've seen across the country are that the homes sell quicker. So in Chicago, for instance, they spent fewer days on the market than those that didn't have a home energy assessment. And in Portland, it informed a lot of respondents on what they might invest in the first year. We found that the projects that are chosen within the most projects that are decided upon for new homeowners are made within the first year. Those decisions are made pretty early on. And so when you have a home energy score that's available to them when they buy the home, it helps inform those decisions early on. And in Austin, Texas, 12% of those actually acted upon that information. So the ACEEE, which is the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, got it, just released a report that reveals that moderately and severely energy burdened residents increased pretty drastically in 2020. It's probably COVID related, but it was already on the climb. And when I say energy burdened, that means if you're moderately energy burdened, you're spending 30% or more of your income on energy costs, or severely is 50% or more of your income on energy costs. And that obviously is a concern for many residents, particularly those who are low income. Because chances are good that they're paying more of their income towards their energy costs. And so something like a HERD initiative would help reveal more of that total cost of living. Sometimes you'll see that denoted as TCL in certain reports, and it makes home ownership a little bit more accessible if you're getting a more complete picture out of the gate from the get-go. So there is a bit of a catch with the HERD, and that is that we have found that there has been some lack of expressed interest anyway from homeowners, or home buyers rather. When we've met with a number of different agents in Ann Arbor, and they have all said that there is not a lot of interest from home buyers. And they'll say that they want it, but when it comes down to choosing between an energy efficient home or not, usually the energy efficiency loses out. And we believe that it's mostly because that cost benefit of spending a little bit more money up front to get the energy efficiency in exchange for lower operating costs is kind of lost in translation. That communication is not clear at this point, we don't believe. And we've got this information because we've met with several agents representing like Reinhardt Realtors and Keller Williams and Berkshire Hathaway and Howard Hanna, some of the largest agencies in Ann Arbor. And I specifically chose agents who have pursued certain designations, like Eco Broker is one designation. Since Eco Broker was established, the National Association of Realtors released a green designation, is what they call it now. And so I've met with both Eco Brokers and green designated realtors because I chose them for their understanding of the topic. And they say that while homebuyers want energy efficiency, they're not quite yet willing to prioritize it. And homeowners are uncertain of the benefits. And they'll end up choosing other amenities, if you will, over energy efficiency. I don't like to refer to energy efficiency as an amenity, but that's how it's seen pretty widely. And we don't yet have a local example of success for a similar ordinance. So Ann Arbor area realtors are a little hesitant to be the first to make that move. For instance, when Portland passed theirs, we saw a lot of other municipalities follow suit pretty shortly after. Hillsborough, Oregon, Bend, Eugene, Milwaukee. But in Michigan, there aren't any yet that have quite this ordinance. So Ann Arbor would be one of the first, and there's a lot of hesitancy when we talk among a lot of the agents. And one thing that a lot of them mention is that though a home energy score costs roughly $150, that generally isn't the final determinant for home buyers. They find that there's a lot of process that's added, and that is where there's a lot of hesitancy. So that said, we used all of that information to inform a program and how we want to develop it. Let's see here. So this is kind of a timeline for what we're working with starting from now. This timeline dates back a little bit to when we first started working on it. And at that time, we worked hard to build upon the work that was already done by this commission in the past. And we also began engaging with real estate agents throughout Ann Arbor. And we've had a number of discussions with them to date. Simultaneously to that, we began seeking out additional resources, such as national cohorts of other municipalities who were exploring similar initiatives, and work with them to kind of learn together what everyone is experiencing. There has also been similar ordinances across the country that have been passed, and there is a lot to learn from those examples. And so we've been meeting with several of those municipalities to hear about their experiences as well. Additionally, we participated in a working group with RMI, who had completed a lot of research and analysis of these other municipalities, and as well as certain different policy pathways. They analyzed both the successes and some of the challenges that a lot of these municipalities have faced. And so as we grounded ourselves last year in the best practices research, we also gained a better understanding of the perspectives held by agents here in Ann Arbor and by our own city's leaders. And we decided to take a closer look at our approach to this work and to this initiative. And based on what we had learned, we decided to take a blend of a voluntary approach and a pilot. And I'll talk about those a little bit more here in just a moment. But those are currently in this timeline are things that we're working on fleshing out and developing. And we are focusing on strategic stakeholder engagement and building some partnerships with organizations who can help us do these home energy scores and support the market that would drive. Once we have that developed and ready to go, we'll go ahead and launch that pilot program and get that implemented later this year. And we'll gather the information that we can from that pilot and do some program assessment. We'll make any adjustments as necessary and then open it up for public input so that we can hear from the public about what they think and what their desires are, or get some feedback on the policy as it was presented, and then move it forward to legal review and get that ordinance approved. And so according to this timeline, we're aiming for early next year for that to have all been completed. So let's take a little closer look at sort of the program development that we've landed on. There are similarities between the soft launch and the phase-in of the benchmarking policy. So if for those who are familiar with the benchmarking policy, or for those who aren't rather, we're starting with the largest square footage buildings and we're phasing them in, and we're lowering that square footage threshold so that more and more buildings are included in the policy or in the requirement year after year. But that's not to stop anyone from benchmarking right now. And so that's what this voluntary soft launch would be, is that we will do education and outreach to inform realtors of what they can do right now and encourage them to start getting home energy scores on homes immediately. Meanwhile, while we're doing that, we'll do a dedicated pilot. We've already identified some realtors who are interested in pursuing this, that would sort of champion taking this on. And through that process, we can identify certain hiccups and opportunities that might arise, but more so, we believe that it will demonstrate the ease of use, how simple it is to get a home energy score for homes, and really get the word out there about the intent. And we're building some partnerships right now that I'll talk about in just a moment that could be offering some free or reduced assessments through this pilot program. And actually, let's just go ahead and jump to those. So Walker Miller is a Detroit-based company. They focus on lower income energy services. They are a private entity that can set their own program qualifications. And so that sets them apart from federal programs that have a qualification maximum of 200%, the poverty level, but Walker Miller can set whatever they want. They have a full-time auditor on staff and they intend to expand. And they focus a lot on workforce development. It's a core competency of Walker Miller. And so we think that Walker Miller could help us educate and inform the market in terms of the home energy scores and realtor engagement. There's also the Green Home Institute. They have a lot of expertise in issuing certificates through the Green Home Professional Institute and the home energy score assessing and LEED accreditation. They've got a ton of different certifications that they certify for, and they can also help meet the demand as needed for home energy score assessors. We're also working with the Ecology Center, who has a lot of experience with climate action, especially when it comes to policies. They've got a strong advocacy network, and we believe that they could help as well with some of the promotion of the work. And we've already began communication with them. And finally, Michigan Saves. To kind of complete the picture, we want to make sure that once we have given home energy scores and informed homeowners of their energy demand, we want to connect them with funding opportunities and competent contractors who can help them do the work that they have identified in their homes. So on that note, I think I'll wrap it up here and see what kind of questions that we have. But otherwise, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Zach. Questions for Zach? Mark, Commissioner Cleavey.
This is a question for, I guess, Zach and Missy. I know that the sustainable energy utility, unlike the Detroit Edison Consumers Energy, actually has an incentive to have their customers be more energy efficient. So I would assume we've heard from Missy that energy efficiency services and programs and stuff would be very important to SEU. So my question is, Missy, is the HERD the tool that the SEU would use to evaluate homes, and would the standardization of HERD be something used across the board and for homes that receive city dollars and help under an SEU model?
HERD would be and will be at some point a powerful tool, I think, for the SEU and whatever we're doing, because it's giving us strategic information and really customized information on how we can help homeowners, new homeowners, make improvements in their home that improve comfort and accessibility. And then the SEU, if it exists, is the vehicle by which we can help them make those improvements, finance those improvements, which is pretty exciting. I'm going to take that, though, Mark, and go one additional step further that Zach didn't talk about too, which is we had explored with the Department of Energy, can we pay as a city for people to get certified as home energy score raters? And the answer was no. They were very clear that you have to go through other training to get that. This is an add-on. Right. And so that sort of stymied us. But here's something we could do. We could eventually hire a city person that does them.
Yeah.
Right. But I guess that's something we're looking at.
Right. So, but I guess, is this the methodology? In other words, if, let's say we have a home that wants to use the solar program, put solar on their house, but the city's gonna go and do that. the amount of energy that the city, the homeowner uses and potentially wastes, reduces the value of the investment of the city putting it on. So there has to be some kind of a standard and a scale based on BTUs or watts per square foot of a house. It has to have an energy performance standard. I guess it looks to me like HERD is that standard that the city's adopting. Is that, we're going to end up with two different systems here, or is the SEU, is it your expectation the SEU and the city will both use HERD?
Yeah, to clarify, HERD would be about information. It is not a building performance standard. So
I thought the home energy standard, the DOE home energy standard is score.
So it is a standard to give you a score in terms of how your home is performing, versus building performance standard would say, if you don't score a certain level, like you have to hit a certain mark within that system.
Right.
So that's the distinction. I imagine that I think you're raising a really good point, and we would have to get to that structure of figuring out what's the goal within the SEU to get to a certain home energy score, and where are we making investments, and sort of like there's a prioritization sort of factor in there, but we haven't gotten there.
So if the Energy Commission were to support HERD, are we, helping the SEU or not, or just,
You are helping the community. You are not hurting any other path that we might take.
Okay. Thanks.
Member Briggs.
Thanks. So if I'm understanding correctly, this is it's kind of at the phase of beginning to pilot this, and the hope is that you might be able to move through that, and by this time next year that we would be looking at potentially an ordinance that City Council would look at adopting. Is that right? Did I get that timeline right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm curious what the time frame is for some of the other communities that have adopted ordinances like this. If it's if the housing market was different, because I can imagine that one of the reasons that this isn't particularly a big interest of folks is that they're trying to find any house that they can afford, as opposed to, whatever the energy audit might say. So I'm curious, how does the time frame for some of the success and the data that was captured in those other cities, like what do you have any sense of what the housing market looked like there? I mean, Austin obviously is it's a growing city with affordable, some of the communities that were mentioned are not affordable communities. So just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of the communities passed theirs at differing times than what we're seeing now. So in this post-pandemic world, the housing market has kind of gone a little haywire. So I'm not sure exactly what parallels at this time in this market we could draw between what existed when those were passed. We're talking about the likes of Portland that also has a very hot housing market. Let's see, I don't feel like I answered your question there.
Well, it sounds like it was, it's varied, and there are some things that are comparable here. I guess my concern is a little bit just the reality of folks that are trying to kind of buy a house in the Ann Arbor market, and people are at very different sort of, it really varies. But I'm wondering, it seems like the real benefit of putting this in ordinance form is really the information that the city's going to get in terms of how these houses rank, and then the ability to potentially approach a whole bunch of new homeowners at the same time, and try to figure out kind of efficiencies of scale in some ways, because I can imagine folks are feeling a little house poor at that moment in time. And so I'm curious kind of how because it is hard, like that when you're first in a home to sort of prioritize making those investments before you kind of lose that report and that information. Curious how you're kind of thinking about that.
Yeah. One thing I heard you mention about the city collecting data, I want to make sure that it's clear that this isn't about the city collecting data. The primary goal here is to inform home buyers. And we want home buyers to have the information. And in fact, In the draft ordinance, there is no requirement that the city, the information be provided to the city. The city will verify whether or not that information is being shared on the home listing, for instance, and will enforce making sure that it is there. Ultimately, once this is in full implementation. And to that note, I also just want to point out that this is one pathway that we've developed based on some of the best practices that we've learned from RMI and some other existing ordinances that are in place in other cities. This timeline is based on that really strategic stakeholder engagement, which is something that we learned from RMI was pretty critical in a lot of other municipalities. Almost all of the municipalities that we talked to in Oregon, for instance, had a hard time with the realtors, and they're a well-organized community, and rightly so. This is where they make their income. So I cannot fully understand. I wouldn't want somebody else coming in and disrupting my workflow if my income depended on it. But I think that's where the careful education and outreach comes in, is because as we do careful engagement to make sure that they are properly informed on what this is intended to do. I think it would, it could behoove us to do that. But I mean,
yeah. No, I agree. They are definitely, an influential organization. And it makes sense to engage them early and often in terms of crafting the program and figuring out what pieces they think would actually be beneficial in terms of making this seeing this as something of value to the folks that they're trying to sell homes to. Because if what they know is that the reality is that this is something that people, say they want to prioritize, but don't really come, they don't really, and they're really do that. Are there ways that we can craft the program so that it becomes something that then does demonstrate value? And I guess I wonder why. I mean, I'm definitely on the spectrum of being comfortable with data being shared with government. So maybe not everybody is. Maybe that is not something that everybody welcomes. But I would think that actually us receiving that information then allows the city to kind of go out, as we have with the Solarize program in some ways, and be able to then offer cost savings for residents. And so that would seem to be a bigger selling point. But I'm kind of curious, why is it crafted that we wouldn't get that data?
Well, I suppose there's no reason we couldn't add that in. I think at this juncture, the reason it wasn't is because most other municipalities are not requiring that, because the focus is more on homeowner or home buyer information, access to information, than it is about anything else. But I'm happy to explore that. Yeah.
Perhaps something to explore. I don't know if it's, it's worth asking others.
Sure.
If I may weigh in on that particular point. So I was also involved in the early efforts behind the ordinance, and we had multiple conversations with Portland and a service provider that was helping Portland. And everything that Zach said is correct as far as the primary objective. But Portland specifically mentioned that a byproduct, if you will, or an additional benefit was exactly what you're getting at. This information, because it's appearing in the MLS, is therefore in the public domain. And they were able to look at that data, and it's fairly randomized because you're having home sales all over the place. So obviously not initially, but over time, you're starting to get a pretty good understanding statistically of what are the home energy scores in various neighborhoods and what kinds of things are potentially identified as needs in those neighborhoods. So that is indeed a secondary benefit, and one that might then help us further down the road with the SEU and with electrification and other things like that. So at least Portland mentioned that. I don't recall other cities mentioning it. That doesn't mean that that wasn't a benefit elsewhere.
If I may jump in, I wanted to elevate something that Zach said, and I want to cushion it in the sense of I can understand that there's likely a lot of frustration that this hasn't kind of moved forward yet. And I don't know if folks caught it, but Zach was talking about this collaboration that he's a part of with other Vanguard cities that are doing this work. And there was some look forward and a lot of look back on what they wish they would have done. And I think that's the recommendation that's being brought forward, is taking those lessons and thinking about how to craft this. I recognize we could choose brute force, and move this forward. We're trying to present something, though, that actually has, in perhaps an idealistic sense, I want the realtors with us. Like I want to get to a point where a home energy score comes onto the market, and realtors often work with their clients and gift them something at point of sale. What if that gift is actually an A20 packet and information, or the beginning of an audit score, or some sort of improvement? Like, how do we, this is information, how do we get to change, right? Like, how do we create a culture and an ecosystem that fundamentally moves from a home energy score to transformational practices in the home that improve comfort, health, and safety? And so I really want to applaud Zach. I know this is super, super frustrating, but he is trying to think about a program. And I think that's frustrating. That's hard work. But thank you, Zach.
Yeah.
Comments from others. Or Zach, did you want to say something? Or somebody else?
I was just going to say thanks to Missy for that phrasing. That's exactly what we're doing. By and large, it's in place. If the commission chose to do otherwise, we theoretically could. And at the same time, there's information on how others have done. I feel optimistic because the likes of Hillsborough, Oregon, for instance, and another municipality that is escaping me in, it might have been Minneapolis, have some great success stories with winning over their local board of realtors, and it created a really strong bond. They found that their realtors turned into their greatest advocates for the program. And now they have a pretty successful and high compliance rate. So that we're trying to use the information available to us to craft this as best we could.
Anyone else? If not, then I'm going to speak up, and this is probably going to be of no surprise to Zach and Missy, because I communicated with them over the weekend and posed a number of questions. So I want to go on record, at least personally, that I would like to see us move as quickly as possible in implementing the HERD program in the ordinance. As was mentioned, this is something that has been roughly 3.5 to 4 years in the works. And we, to use the words of Ms. Appleyard, who called in earlier, the area under the emissions over time curve is extremely important. And my belief is that, and this goes back, I participated in 2 meetings with the 3 members of the executive board of the realtors, the board of realtors. The issues that are of concern today were the same issues that they had when we spoke with them 2 years ago. They haven't changed. And they won't change, in my view, in the next 9 months. There is clearly a tension between ramming something down someone's throat and quick action. But my concern is that we, with climate action, are going to be confronted with this in nearly everything that we do. And maybe this is not a good analogy, but we're going to have a climate millage on the ballot. And if 60% or 51% approve the millage, then there's going to be a lot of other people that aren't happy about it. And that's going to be true with just about anything that we do. There's going to be individuals and constituencies that fight this. But I think we have to be driven by the crisis. It was declared an emergency by council, but I think a lot of people would say that we're in a climate crisis. And therefore, our job is to advise council. My belief is that we should move forward as quickly as possible. And that will be something that council determines in talking with staff and maybe inside conversations with members of the commission. But I feel very strongly that while there's benefits to waiting, there is a significant opportunity cost. Roughly 1,000 to 1,200 homes are sold in Ann Arbor as homes and condominiums every year. So we're losing that number of data points every year. And I'm going to just bring up one other point. When this was first posted on the Legistar, the presentation was dated in September, and now we're in February, and we're losing time. So every single one of the actions that we take, I think it's really important that commission and staff and council think, what are the trade-offs? What are the opportunity costs? What are the benefits? And I'll just finish by saying one more time, let's move quickly. Commissioner Overbeck.
Yeah, I think I have to just weigh in briefly. I totally agree with John. If we have a decarbonization, a net zero by 2030, which I believe council, has spoken on, right? That's going to be impossible unless we do everything we can to move it ahead fast. We don't have any time to waste. So I think we just have to give this a shot. And if we get resistance, we have to listen to that resistance and work out an alternate solution. But the sooner we push it through or recommend it, the sooner we hopefully will have this kind of ordinance. It makes total sense. We're just not, if to decarbonize all the homes and buildings in Ann Arbor, we have to do this. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Commissioner Cleary.
Just a comment and then a question. You were talking about the Real Estate Association, and their position hasn't changed and nothing's changed in 2 years. We took this to the state legislature in 2008 when I was managing the Better Business Buildings program for the state, and had the same conversations. And it hasn't changed in Lansing either since then. So I couldn't agree with you more that all pollution is local, so we better deal with this now. So my question is this, John: I know that we have a lag of a month, so if we get a resolution, put on the books today, then we vote on it at the next meeting. Do you have verbiage you'd like to use to propose for a resolution? And if you do, I'll be happy to say so moved and get this thing moving. If you got verbiage, let's get it going. Otherwise, I'll just say I propose we craft a resolution and somebody can second it. Whatever your privilege, I think we should do it as well.
Well, to answer that off the cuff, because the idea I hadn't thought of before until it came up tonight. I don't know that, frankly, we have to do a resolution. It's a formality. I think one option we could do is have a show of hands who thinks we should move forward as quickly as possible. And the other is that we basically follow the timeline, and simply OSI and council would take that into advisement. That's all we can do anyhow. So I don't know that we need to craft a bunch of whereas statements and have a first reading and a second reading and everything else. There may be benefit in that. And I will yield the floor to Councilmember Briggs. She had her hand up before that, but she may want to comment on that.
Yeah, thanks. Sounds like piano practice or piano banging has begun in my side room. But I understand the desire to move quickly on this. I understand the frustration of seeing something that's been sitting, that feels like it's been sitting for a long period of time, and seeing the resistance that happened a couple of years ago and feeling like it's still there. I will say from my vantage point, it is a heck of a lot easier to move an ordinance forward and get support for it at the council table if, in addition to the voices of folks that are opposing it, there are voices of folks that support it. And so this pilot program that's moving forward is building support from from folks that work as realtors, and can speak to the success of it, or speak to the benefits of it. And so I would prefer to at least see, I mean, as quickly as we can move forward, I would think means helping to learn how this can work and be supported in our community and be successful. And honestly, getting the scores isn't enough. We have to have people who are doing something with those scores, right? And so we want the realtors to be excited about it and talking about it in a positive way. And there's taking a little bit of time to get that part right can build success for the program in the long term. And so, if we can't get there after our pilot program, then maybe we abandon that idea. But I would, at least, since staff seems to be working on this, I'd like to give them that opportunity to build some support and to build some ideas for how we roll this out in the most successful way that's possible in our community.
Any other comments? So I'll weigh in again. That overlaps with OSI's position. I still feel strongly that we're going to, with this pilot, be working with realtors that are already inclined to support this. And certainly it will help to have voices in the realtor community that are supportive of this. I just think that what we're going to be confronted with every step of the way, going back to Commissioner Overpeck's statement, is every time that we do something with climate, because there is no social cost of carbon in any of the calculations, there are going to be people that are going to be lined up against what we're doing. So I think we just have to be cognizant of speed. And one of the things that we talked about when we talked about these renewable energy criteria and principles is the principle of speed. And I think we have to really remember that. And there's going to be resistance against this, and there will clearly be in this case. But I think, at least I'm belaboring the point. You know where I stand. I encourage others to speak up before we leave this topic and move on to the next one. Any other? So, Commissioner Levin, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of torn on this topic. It does seem like something we talked about maybe 3-4 years ago. So it does seem like the idea has been around for a long time. On the other hand, I do like the idea of getting more support behind it, because the realtors are the ones that are ultimately going to be very involved in the program. My concern with the pilot, and I don't fully know if there's a great way to fix this, is that the benefit of this program, as I see it, is you can compare multiple properties that you're looking at. Whereas in a pilot, I don't know how many people are going to be involved. So a homeowner comes along and wants to look at some houses, they're not going to have a lot of choices of ones that have these scores. So I guess that's my biggest concern, I guess, is how are we going to make a pilot that is going to be effective in showing how well this is going to work.
Commissioner Kerber.
Yes, I fully support the concept and moving quickly, but I also have to step back a bit because there are a lot of things that are on the plate, all of which will need some attention and some support within the community. I don't think you can assume that support within the community is unbounded. I think there is a limit. And so because of that, I think you really need to prioritize all the top things that you need to accomplish to get to the 2030 goal. I'm concerned that if I had to prioritize this would not be in my top 5. But I'm just wondering what other people think. I'm concerned that the population of the city does not have an unlimited amount of interest in doing all the things that we are lining up.
Thank you. Any other comments before we leave the topic? Commissioner Colin Garcia.
Thank you, John. I'm curious about the pilot and how much of it has been designed so far. If you could elaborate on that, that'd be great, Zach.
Certainly. That's a great question. So the pilot right now is still in program development, but some of the preliminary conversations that we've had with interested realtors would be getting dedication from the realtors who would commit to all of their homes that they sell complying with what would be the HURD ordinance. And then using or leveraging some of the collaborations that we've built with, say, Walker Miller, who we've already begun discussion with, who's putting together a format for how they could meet the demand for a pilot and or for an expanded full-fledged program, to who could offer free home energy assessments. And the pilot ideally would be free so that it would show just how simple the process can be and just kind of remove any mental barriers for a lot of the realtors and home buyers, and show that it's really just a house visit prior to the sale. And the idea then is that once we have done that a number of times through the pilot, it will give us an opportunity to talk through any hiccups that the realtors have experienced during that time and make adjustments as necessary, but also to just show how simple it is. And once we have some realtors who have gone through the process and understand truly how easy and straightforward it is, that their word among their peers would be, I think that would be a strong leveraging tool.
How far before the sale is this? What is the window of time prior to the sale? Is there like a limit of time?
That's a really good question, and where the legality or the likelihood of lawsuits gets really tricky. Of course, we would want it as close to time of listing as possible. Through some assessments that we've done with some legal review, it appears that the closer we get to a time of marketing requirement, the higher the likelihood is that there will be some legal pushback from the community. And so the goal is to balance that, to find a timeline that would reduce the amount of legal pushback with the efficacy of having it at time of listing. That's really the most effective time to have it available. But as we've seen with some other policies and legislation in the state of Michigan, our current legislature tends to put a ban on things that they don't like outright. And so we don't want to, the reason we want to avoid any sort of legal intervention is because it could turn this whole thing on its head and we might not be able to enforce it at all, which isn't a position any of us want to be in. So there isn't a firm timeline yet, but as the program fleshes out, we would work with different timelines. And that's the idea of using a pilot, is to find that process flow and what works easiest for realtors and home buyers during the process.
Do you have a range of number of participating buildings that you would like to include as far as a successful pilot?
In my last conversation with Walker Miller, we decided that we would try to secure home energy assessments for 100 buildings, which would get us through a couple of months, perhaps, of home sales. Especially if not all realtors are participating, that would get us through more time than that. But we don't intend to extend the pilot program much longer than that. We don't want the pilot to take a long time.
Are you targeting brokers or are you targeting individual realtors?
A little bit of both. There's more to come on that yet, but the conversations that we've had right now are with individual realtors who are looking to champion it at their brokerage among their agency. And there is, just before this meeting, I got information from one of those realtors about others who he would like to recruit to help participate in this pilot. So there's certainly some growing interest in unveiling a pilot program. Again, so it's happening as we speak, piecing that together. So
I guess
I had more info for you right now. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just, I'm listening to everything that you've been saying so far, and then this additional detail that you're providing us. And I'm listening for perhaps opportunities to compress the timeline in some way, to, minimize the cost of not having something like this in place for the city. But thank you so much for providing this information. Really appreciate it. It helps me understand better.
And just a quick note of clarification for my benefit. Yeah, you mentioned compress the timeline. There were a couple of different timelines that I mentioned. And, I want to make sure that you're talking about the timeline to implementation of a full-fledged program, right? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Juneau.
Thank you. I think in your slide, Zach, you highlighted as one of the primary concerns, it seems like, the realtors not being able to translate what they perceive as interest into commitment and follow through. Is that kind of a correct way to describe it?
Yeah, it's I think even more than a simple perception of interest. The realtors who I've talked to will say that many of their the home buyers, their clients that they work with, will say, I'm interested in this if they're asked. Generally speaking, many of the realtors say that this isn't something that's brought up by home buyers. I think there's maybe a chicken and an egg situation going on here. Is it not being brought up because it's not part of the home buying process yet? Or is it not part of the home buying process? You know what I'm saying? That perhaps if once HERD is in place, it introduces that as a talking point among these conversations. But that the interest wanes once they start getting down to the details of buying a house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I'd love to understand, and maybe not at this time, but in the future, what are some of those details that might, cause them to wane, if it's cost or if it's another factor. But I guess my other thought as you're going through the pilot is, I imagine that the primary goal is really more about the homeowner, the home buyer, and the benefits that they can receive related to efficiency. Is the pilot going to be able to kind of quantify or translate that into, be able to collect and give examples of how much home buyers might be saving, or other ways that we can kind of really make this a little bit more of an appealing and clear connection for folks? I mean, is that something that's already being covered?
Yeah, in terms of the cost to the homeowner, cost savings for energy efficiency, a lot of that information would be included in a home energy score. So once that's attained by an assessor, they have information on where to leverage their dollars and what would give them the quickest payback, and roughly how much those would cost, ideally. Some specifics of the report are regulated by the DOE, so it has to include certain information. There are some participating assessors who will go above and beyond and include some additional information in there. And sometimes that includes certain costs, but sometimes that's it varies based on location in the country.
Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. I'm just trying to think through, like, if there's like a testimonial or something, because it seems like there might just be a disconnect between, like, you know, the payoff and the benefits the system could provide. But thank you so much for that.
Certainly. Thanks for your questions.
Commissioner McCoy.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I mean, something you said, Zach, made me think about how I feel like it's very normal when looking for apartments to ask like the landlord or current tenants what the current like utility bills are. And that to me feels something that's like very normalized in a renting search process. And so like I do think, you know, you had said like, oh, it's hard to know if this is a chicken or the egg problem, if people don't know to ask, if people would be interested once it becomes normalized. I think that is true. So I think for me, that's something like I would be interested in, because that's something I'm used to asking now when I'm seeking housing. And so I think it is something that maybe once it's normalized, it will become more common and something interested. And I wonder if part of the framing for people could be like, I know, you know, when people are looking at purchasing homes, you get like, oh, this would be approximately your monthly payment, right? That includes your mortgage, your interest, and your taxes, right? Like, you know, this is about how much it would cost. If the framing could be like, okay, add, you know, based on this home energy audit score, like add $200 to your monthly payment for this home, right? And so then I would be thinking about, oh, my place will cost $1,200 a month instead of $1,000 a month compared to this home, right? And if it's framed in how it will impact your monthly payment, if that would help convince people.
Commissioner Cleary. You're muted, Mark.
God. We have a Patton Guild Neighborhood Association that I'm part of, one of the founders and stuff. And we've been looking at this issue as part of our Solarized Patton Guild project, looking at the issue of you know, high performing homes, basic homes that have a high energy score, and solar, and those that have high energy scores, what difference that makes, and in terms of real estate. And, you know, to the extent that the association and the neighborhood can position itself as a preferred place for a real estate, things like that. Anyway, this led me to hook up with the National Realtors Association, and they, in 2021, they published a report. This is the National Association of Realtors. They published a report called Realtors and Sustainability Report. I urge people to take a look at that. There's three really important, I think, findings from that report that might lend themselves to this discussion. First is they, quote, found that most real estate agents unfortunately don't realize that high performing features actually increase a home's value. Second of all, agents aren't able to recognize high performing homes and subsequently value it improperly. And third, most sellers don't know that high performing features such as home insulation and air sealing are what produces lower cost, comfort, and warmth in their homes. So, you know, I think that I appreciate the fact that we're gonna go out and try and educate the realtors here. We're gonna do a pilot program and all that stuff. But ultimately, we have to get this done. So I think, you know, let's communicate to the City Council that we strongly endorse the Office of Sustainability Innovations work in this area, and that it is our strong opinion that the City Council should expedite this process as soon as possible and get us to an ordinance, and do what's necessary to get that done. And otherwise, we're going to sit here and say, oh, well, we'll just business as usual and sit back and not do anything. I appreciate it. We'd like to have some more data, but honestly, folks, there's a ton of data out there, including the National Real Estate Association. We don't need more data. We don't need more stuff. We need to push the envelope. And if, you know, the Energy Commission's stating this in public, that we think, you know, energy efficient homes are a good thing, you know, well, let's do it. Let's get out there and let's do it. So, John, I support the thing. If you were to put that forward, I would certainly vote yes, that this should be communicated in whatever form makes sense to the City Commission as quickly as possible.
Mark, in the interest of time, we have one other subject to take up that I'm going to try to deal with quickly. But I think maybe it's worth moving on. I don't know that a vote is going to change a whole lot, so I don't think I'm going to bother to do that. I'll just reiterate my point using language of paraphrasing Michael Mann and in effect also Saul Griffith. I mean, we have arrows in our quiver and we need to be using those arrows. This one has been in our quiver for a year. And my sense is that instead of a pilot, maybe another thing that we should think about is really deep education and engagement with the realtors, because I don't think the pilot's going to tell us a whole lot more. But that's just my personal opinion, and I leave it to Councilmember Briggs and Missy and others to hammer this out and to see what we can do. I think we know what the thoughts are of everybody, and now the idea is how do we move forward as expeditiously as possible, taking into account also things like what Commissioner Kerber mentioned. So if no one has any objections, I'm going to close this topic and move on to the next one, which is a resolution that was referred by City Council to 4 commissions. If I'm not mistaken, and Councilmember Briggs, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Energy, Environment, Transportation, and Planning. So this is a resolution that was penned by Councilmember Griswold and co-sponsored by Councilmember Hayner, and Council deferred action and asked that the 4 commissions that I mentioned weigh in on this. And so what I thought we would do tonight and not have a long debate on this is at least, in a sense, read this into the record. And so everybody can have a chance to look at it, maybe have a brief discussion of it. I sent out a version with some comments that I had. And so what I would ask Missy maybe is to put the original version up. And if we can get a vote or a motion to consider the resolution in a second, then we can open it up for discussion and possibly move quickly to my friendly amendments, have some quick discussion, and then potentially vote on it and finalize this at our next meeting. But I'm, of course, open to everybody else's input on the matter. Councilmember Briggs.
Actually, I realized I probably should open it up for get into the discussion, and then I can say something.
Okay. So for those who haven't read it, basically the resolution name effectively describes what's being asked, is that it's asking the city to basically engage with the University of Michigan and encourage the University of Michigan to look into constructing, developing 2,000 units of workforce housing, specifically in this case on North Campus. And also doing some other things in terms of agreeing on, as student population increases together with employment population, that there we are moving to the resolve clauses, that there be some kind of formula that the university in the city would try to reach some kind of understanding on that the university would implement. So here are the resolve clauses. And I'm not going to read these. What I'd like first is Councilmember Briggs to comment, and then I'm going to ask for someone to make a motion with a possible second if people feel comfortable, and then open it up. Go ahead, Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, so it's pretty unusual for us to have a resolution that comes to council and then get referred to four different commissions for feedback. So I just kind of want to note that. And it wasn't really necessarily specified at the commission table what feedback would be helpful for the sponsors in terms of thinking about how to move this forward. There was some general discussion at the council table about some of the pieces around this resolved clause, some of the elements that are in this, kind of our ability to, how are we coming out with this specific number, and some different elements and some of the different pieces that we're asking within the resolved clause. But I guess, it's in terms of thinking about the basic premise here is that we're facing an affordability crisis, housing crisis in the city of Ann Arbor. And we are trying to figure out what we can do on the city's end to change our housing policies to expedite housing in our community. And this is a thought of, this is from the sponsors. This is an idea that, our partner, University of Michigan, might consider thinking about housing outside of student housing, thinking about workforce housing and how that might play into their goals. Currently, it's important to know that University of Michigan doesn't, like many universities, doesn't have this as part of their kind of set of goals that they would provide workforce housing. I think probably there are some limitations, obviously, from a private perspective about how we might be able to energy efficiency and what we can require out of that. Obviously, the university has the ability to really do a lot more if they were to build housing and to build workforce housing. And so it may be helpful, to go away from this discussion and think about it for a month or something like that and provide some notes and that even just sending those in to the sponsors of this might be helpful. But maybe there's some very specific thoughts that can come out of this as general feedback from the Energy Commission as well as to on this matter. So that's my basic overview. This was not my resolution that I brought forward.
Thank you. What I would like to do before we get additional comments, Commissioner Peck, is get a motion to at least consider this and possibly a second. If there is no intention to doing that, then of course we would drop the matter. But can we get a motion in a second or?
Motion to consider it.
Okay.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Peck and a second from Commissioner Calvin Garcia, and I think I saw another hand. So we'll open it up for discussion, and I'll start with you, Commissioner Overpeck.
Yeah, it's funny. I would be interested in knowing why council's being a little tentative here. I can imagine that there's a long tradition of sort of town and gown difficulty. I'm not sure. But I think this could fly. I think it needs to be strengthened, and let's consider we shouldn't be building more housing unless it's net zero. And the university shouldn't be building anything unless it's net zero. So, and they know that, and they're committed to that already in their carbon neutrality plan, they being us. So I think we could add that, and you could add it in a nice way. It's just, this whole thing is just like aspirational. But I do think the University of Michigan is considering some very visionary changes on our North Campus, including trying to create some communities of the future. And it makes total sense in our carbon neutrality plan as well to consider workforce housing. And for the same reasons that you have in this resolution, which is to reduce the commuting. I think the university is also thinking of ways and what I'm pushing for anyhow is to be more integrated with Ann Arbor. And this is a great way to do that, because it's not just the students, it's like you said, it's the workforce. But it would be students and workforce together, hopefully faculty included or part of the workforce. And so I think this will be an easier thing for the University of Michigan to consider and to embrace than anyone might be thinking. That said, there's a new president being hired now, and just announced today is that process to try and hire that new president by summer. I think it'd be really smart to have this thing done and already communicated to the University of Michigan before this summer, so that the new president would be thinking about this when she or he was thinking about whether to come to Michigan. All of us have to really be a little worried that the new president might not be as embracing of carbon neutrality as the previous president was. He was very embracing. And we really want to make sure that whoever we hire for the new president, given the size of University of Michigan and the importance to Ann Arbor in terms of everything, square footage and carbon neutrality, that person is up for what we're asking. Thank you.
Thanks for those insights. Other comments? Missy, would you mind showing the version that I sent to everyone? And I won't belabor each and every point, but I'd like to at least call out a couple of points while you're doing that. So these are some suggested changes that I made, and I think Commissioner Peck made a couple of other good suggestions that we would want to consider when we then vote on this. I would like to point out that both the 820 plan and the PCCN's recommendations called for additional housing to be built in Ann Arbor, and in the case of U of M, on its periphery, which would then apply to North Campus. So if you can scroll down, there's a few updated statistics in here, and I've footnoted those, so you might want to take a look at those. Some of these are correct, but some of these were a little bit understated. So you can see employment is up over 6,000 jobs. I tried to get in the next clause where it talks about 118 private companies have been launched, 31 in fiscal year 20. The number of jobs, I went to Spark and they were unable to provide me a number, but hopefully I can get that from the university. This clause here, 39%, that comes directly from the University of Michigan and their website. So what this is basically telling us, and there's some other slides that I can show either tonight or tomorrow, is what we clearly are seeing is vehicle miles traveled are increasing. The emissions go up with those, as is reflected in this other statement I added. And that means also if you're looking at impact on individuals and family units, that means those people are spending more time in their car and their transportation costs are higher because they can't afford to live in the city, and there isn't frankly enough supply to meet demand. There's some other things in here that you can read yourself. I will send to everyone, rather than us looking at them tonight, 2 slides that back up the 2 statements that are in the middle of the page there, showing that ownership is down in these income ranges, and not only that, the percentage of, or the percentage or proportion of renters, particularly everybody earning less than 50,000, and almost every range below that, has also decreased. So that not only are they not able to buy a home, but they're also not able to afford to rent a home in the city of Ann Arbor. And so Missy, go ahead and scan down. I'm not going to go through, I don't think, a whole lot more. I didn't do a whole lot to change to the resolve clauses. Those might be something that we consider, but I just wanted people to see the kinds of things that I added, and I'll open it up for a quick discussion. And otherwise, then what I'd like to do is essentially record in the minutes that we've had a first reading or review of the resolution, and that we would then take into account people's potential changes and vote on it in the next meeting. Commissioner Peck, did you have anything else to say, or is your hand just up from before? Okay, so Commissioner Clevey.
I just was wondering if you could add, before you send it out, add the piece Commissioner Peck said, whether it's net zero or perhaps be more specific lead standard. We all know you can do net zero in a whole bunch of ways, add a few more bicycle racks and we got net zero. So, let's make sure this housing has insulation in the walls, energy efficient stuff. Meets the electrical code that we're trying to do. And hopefully it's positioned so if it's not solar on it, at least it's solar ready. And so if we're going to put houses in green space, let's make sure they face south and, some things like that. So, let's add that to what you're going to send out, because I agree totally. We're going to do this. Let's do it right.
Commissioner Overbeck.
So in our carbon neutrality work, I don't think we specified a building, LEED or anything like that. I think we came to the conclusion LEED isn't really appropriate for this. But I'm not an expert in that space, and I don't remember I know there were some other ideas discussed.
There's a recommendation of 7 categories of building, and the university is establishing building standards. I know that they're in the process of being reviewed. I don't know what the recommendations were. There were recommendations, and I don't remember exactly what they were for residential units. But I think something to the effect of net zero makes sense, because the university and the city are both pledged to net zero.
Right.
So
that's what I would say. Something compatible with Ann Arbor's commitment and the University of Michigan's commitment to net zero.
Yeah, that would work. That would work. Yes.
And the other thing is, I like distributed solar personally very much, and I don't really want to dilute that. But I think, we don't want to be seen as telling University of Michigan how to do it. Because their plan right now is to do ground source heat pumps and utility scale solar and wind. I think there's a good chance, Mark, that they would like to put solar on top of some things. But so far, I haven't seen anything in that direction.
This could be a community solar project.
I totally agree. It's the thing to do, but it's not the cheapest thing to do.
Well, so what I would recommend is I'll try to work something in there. And I think one thing we can be cognizant of is A, not being overly prescriptive, and B, considering, do we put it in a whereas clause or do we put it in a resolve clause? And the resolve clauses already are basically just that the city consults with the university and is not making, specific demands. And maybe the number is something that we should also talk about, whether we think 2,000 is appropriate number, or whether we weigh in and say it should be higher or lower or non-specific. So maybe those are the kinds of things that all of us think about here in the next month.
And there's no problem in my mind for us to say something like, we recommend exploration of, making this a demonstration development, including distributed energy on location or something like that, but say it in a way that we recommend or something, don't get too pushy. Because I just know there's still some people at U of M who just hate anyone telling them what to do. It's like this arrogance or something. I don't know what it is. So we just have to be a little, and all leadership is all changing. So that's probably going to change, but
we probably all do, myself included.
That's all I'm saying, right? I'm not trying to say be total, pull all punches.
Commissioner Hookham.
Just really quickly, I noticed that there's a lot of capitalized words in there that aren't defined, like what is workplace housing? I could interpret that a lot of ways. You inserted the word affordable with a capital. I don't know what that means. I could define that 100 different ways probably. So the sponsors of the resolution should probably look at it in the way of people that don't know better, and please define words that are capitalized. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we will close this topic and take it up in our next meeting and go back to our agenda, which is reports from OSI and news from the commission and commissioners. Missy, you want to start us out?
Sure, you bet. Let me just get out of my notes here. Great discussion. Sorry, before we close that, Chair Mirsky, should I just send you the notes and you'll do a workup on proposed edits and then we'll circulate it in minutes? Okay, great.
Yep, you can reflect that in the minutes too.
Perfect. Got
and
it.
if anybody has any specific comments or wants to collaborate with me as we did on the feasibility study, that would not be in the case of a quorum, feel free to reach out to me and I'll make sure that we do that in a small group so that we're not violating Open Meeting Act related issues. So I'll do it on my own unless I hear from anybody. And yes, Councilmember Briggs.
And I would just, I guess, to save folks time, I think that ultimately the end resolution here is going to look really different. And so it's probably not worth your time really thinking through, like, does this exact whereas clause make sense or this resolved clause? But if there are just some general principles or ideas that the Energy Commission finds to be valuable, that we would, there's support of this idea. And then if we were presenting something, that this would be a key statement that might be included in that. I'm sure that the sponsors of this welcome additional edits as well to the resolution, but a general principle might also be helpful.
Thanks for that guidance.
Okay, thank you so much. For the update. And some of the things going on, just to share, the last few weeks have been pretty busy as we prep for the next budget cycle. For those who may not be as familiar, which I also am constantly learning as I'm only in year 3.5, the city has a 2-year budget process. So we're the second year of a 2-year budget. So it's really tweaks and modifications, but we have a newest city administrator. And so we're learning a process together and their priorities as well. So that's been pretty heavy on our plate, kind of reframing, recrafting, and of course, prepping for a potential millage and the budget there, which I look forward to presenting to the body. But we've started to really spend a lot of time moving that strategy forward. And of course, working with counterparts like legal to understand where the lines are in terms of how we can allocate those resources. And I'm pretty excited about some of the I don't think they're pretty excited. I'm pretty excited about some of the ways that we're pushing what's possible with that potential resource. Also wanted to share, we're gearing up. We'll be filing paperwork shortly to intervene in the DC Integrated Resource Plan the rate case that just came out. So we're prepping for that. We will unequivocally be intervening. For those who haven't seen it, it's not great news. It's a pretty significant increase in streetlight rates, residential rates, commercial rates, and we're not pleased. So we'll be spending a lot of time doing discovery and working in that landscape. And I know we'll be coming to the commission with our overview, but we have 1,200, 1,400 pages to get through in that intervention. So it'll take us a little bit of time. On the opposite side, I want to share good news, which is the landfill solar project is coming soon. We are prepping to come to the body, hopefully in April. We would like to come to the Energy Commission and share with you the project and preview the pricing, and then the next week go to council with the pricing and the special contract, so we can decide if we want to move forward in that. So my understanding is DT is in final negotiation with the preferred vendor to get to final pricing, so we can have that available. Just to kind of fill you in where we go from there is once City Council considers, if they decide to move forward with the special contract, that special contract then goes to the Michigan Public Service Commission, and once blessed by the Public Service Commission, the project moves forward. So shovels could be in the ground as early as the fall if everything moves forward. So it's a pretty exciting project moving forward. And then I will be coming to you in a very near near term talking about the potential for a VPPA and some options that we have there. So just wanted to tee that up. This is actually a side project that got approved in our last VGP filing, the Voluntary Green Pricing Program, where we got the landfill solar to be a community solar offering. We also asked for the utility to consider a VPPA with the city, and the judge approved that. And so now we're trying to understand, as part of the options analysis, what that would actually look like. And I'd like to bring that to the body and get your thoughts and reactions on it before we decide how we want to move that forward. For those who don't know, we are in, I have no idea what day it is. It's Tuesday. We are in day 3 of the Zero Waste Challenge here at the city. And I certainly related as we think about the circular economy, encourage everyone to participate in that. We will also be running the Zero Waste Challenge during A20 week, and we are working with students at the University of Michigan to run the Zero Waste Challenge in the fall. So join anytime. It is really accessible. I appreciate our collaborators and partners helping that forward. There's a lot of other things. We are working on a written update that I would like to send to the commission in advance, kind of following what the Transportation Commission does. So that way you can kind of see the suite of things that are happening. We've started a template. We're just a little bit slow to finish that template, as we've been doing some pretty sweet work. The last thing I just wanted to share, this is for anyone who might be listening on the line and also for our commissioners. Right now, public comment is open on ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act spending. Please cast your vote for the kinds of projects that you'd like to see supported. And if you don't see a project that you like in that hopper, please let us know. It's really, really important that we get feedback. Ultimately, council will make the decision, but we want to make sure that all of us are hearing from you with the projects. And there are some sustainability projects. But it's your choice. You get to vote. So with that, I will stop. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Missy. Appreciate that update. Update from and news from commissioners. So go ahead, Councilmember Briggs.
Sorry, it's debating whether or not this is an update for the Energy Commission or not. It's on my mind today, and we just talked about U of M, so I'll update it. Anyway, so if for folks who are following the council meeting last night, council opted to move forward with a widening of East Medical Center Drive Bridge, lifting sort of conditions on that widening, which it will have sort of expanded non-motorized connections on the eastern side of the bridge, which is the side kind of closest to North Campus, but the sidewalk on the west side will be reduced from 10.5 feet to 8 feet. I am disappointed about us having not more conditions on that. I'm expressing more viewpoints of my own than I probably should at this point, but it's sort of maybe relevant for this discussion, because this was kind of a little bit of a wrestling between University of Michigan and the city of Ann Arbor about what that project should look like, and what values were important to move forward in that project.
I appreciate that insight and that news. So I will recognize other commissioners, but the next point on the agenda is working group updates, and I'll ask if there's any updates from working groups, and if so, if anybody else comes up with another idea, I'll recognize them. Does anybody want to provide a working group update?
There's a very small update for the transportation transportation electrification group on the electric vehicle readiness ordinance that passed early last year. There's some changes that are being made. I think I mentioned it at our last meeting, and that's proceeding. It's going to be going before the Planning Commission in the next month or so. The changes that are being considered, which I will be giving you more of an update at that time. They haven't been solidified yet.
Thank you, Carlene. Anyone else? Seeing no hands, we'll move now to closing a few agenda items. The first is public input. So this is another opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. If you are watching on CTN, please call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247. and enter meeting ID 93767516819. This information is also displayed on the agenda and the video feed. Staff will select callers that have raised their hands one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone, and you will then hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any background noises so that we may hear you. And finally, please state your name and address at the beginning of the comments. If I was smart, I would record that and press a playback. So, do we have any?
Caller ending in 534.
Good evening. My name is Tom Stolberg. I live in Lower Town in Ann Arbor. And I want to talk about, I could talk about a lot of things from this meeting, but I want to talk about that last bit, the housing resolution. I am very encouraged by the direction that you were taking this in. I think we have a really interesting pro and con, a monstrous pro and con with the University of Michigan. It's like swinging for a home run and you're either going to strike out or you're going to get it. We can't make the university do much of anything. But if they do go along with this, they can do so much with this. When the university gets something right, they really do get it right. And in this, here's an opportunity. If we give them as much encouragement as we can and go ahead and push the limit, they'll throttle back, I suppose, if they want to. Like I said, you're not going to make them do anything they don't want to do. But the encouragement and the opportunity are just enormous here. And I'm hopeful that one of the things that the university can do is do things that the private marketplace cannot do. In the private marketplace, there's a lot of things that we are hoping developers will do, but we can't, well, our current ordinances don't necessarily make them do it. And sometimes we offer incentives and premiums, and we have ordinance trade-offs where we might give them 30% more height if they add in some sustainability measures or affordable housing, but these are options. But the university, if they decide to do something, they'll do it. They'll put in the sustainability measures, and it's done. So we don't have to, on a parcel by parcel in the private marketplace, hope that we get it and nudge people along. So I really think this is a wonderful opportunity. By the way, I am a real estate professional, been one for over 30 years now, currently a broker. So I have a little insight into some of the other things you're talking about. But I want to mention the University of Michigan added, I think, about 8,000 new students over the last decade. And they put in, they have the Munger dorm. They took up maybe 1,000 beds. And the private marketplace, let's say approximately 4,000 beds. We're still short on the number of beds needed just to house the new students that the university's brought in. So on the one hand, they're a wonderful partner to engage with this opportunity. On the other hand, we should make them feel a little obligated. They brought these numbers up here, and because those beds aren't met in terms of supply and demand, that's pushed over into the rest of our town and impact. And we're also talking about other additional employees that have been brought in. That number of students requires X number of employees at the university as well. So I'm really hopeful that we can get somewhere with this, and I'm glad that a couple council members just got the ball rolling and go ahead and take it the next step. And I think this is a really good commission to be pushing this. Dr. Stoltz's office is called the Office of Sustainability and Innovation. Well, just the right department and the right commission to push this a little bit. Go ahead and push the envelope on this one. It's my encouragement to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for sticking with us, and thanks for your comments. Missing anyone else?
That's all, Chairmersky.
Okay, so we are down to items for the next agenda. And what I'd like to preface any discussion of that with is, first of all, when we had our working session in January, we voted on topics. Those are reflected in the meeting minutes. And we covered one of those topics today, and that's an update on the Bryant Neighborhood. That was one of the top vote getters. I want to point out, and this is something that Carlene and Missy and I will talk about. With the climate millage, that is something where we're going to have somebody probably come from the outside and talk at the appropriate time when they're ready. Staff is not able to weigh in on, the millage, and they can certainly ask questions, but it's probably unlikely that we're going to ask staff to do that. Just FYI, I'm a little bit connected in. I drafted an FAQ with some previous input that was provided, and that's gone back to the Brain Trust, or that's been working on this. So hopefully that's something that we can hear about relatively soon. That's near the top of our agenda. But I just wanted to mention that we're cognizant of what we talked about last time and trying to handle items according to that force ranking that we did. So anything else about that list, or something that's missing, or something that's come up? Any other input? Seeing none, Carlene and Missy and I will put our heads together as far as the next meeting. And Missy's already mentioned a couple things that we want to have updates on, maybe not next month, but soon. And don't hesitate to reach out to any of us in the middle of the month. Missy, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I forgot this in the updates, but before we adjourn, I wanted to share that on Thursday night, RMI, formerly the Rocky Mountain Institute, is doing a special webinar on energy options available to Ann Arbor. They've customized it for us, looking at kind of Michigan energy policy, what others are doing. It's a really nice overview. And if you know anyone, I'm sure the commission doesn't need this, but if you know anyone that might be interested, please help us share the word about that webinar. It'll be 6 o'clock, and you can find all the details on the website.
When you say on the website, on the
you can find it both on the city's website. If you go to the main site and go to calendar, it's listed for Thursday night, but also at the OSI site on sustainability, we have an events tab, and you can find it there too.
Okay, good. Thanks. Great tip. And I encourage everybody to share that with your networks. I think that's it. So it is 8:41, and I declare this meeting adjourned. Thanks everybody for hanging in there, and I appreciate the great discussion tonight. Have a good one.